Yeah, we're good. All right. So welcome to Real Estate Invention Part 1. This is the introduction, and my name is Bruce M Firestone. I am your host and your teacher and your instructor and your coach. And thank you very much for joining us to talk about real estate invention. I'm going to come back to this slide, but first I want to go to the next slide, which is coming up here in a minute. There we are. I'm joined today by somebody who happens to be related to me. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, everybody.
Well, at least you didn't say hi, Matt. So this is Matthew Firestone, my co-host, and I'll let him introduce himself.
My name is Matthew Firestone, as my father so introduced me as, and I've been a realtor for 9 years, licensed realtor for 9 years. I've been in real estate for more like 11. Got my real estate license when I was 17, but wasn't actually allowed to practice until I was 18. I do a lot of project management for my clients. I like to consider myself a full-service broker, so that means that I do financing, I manage fit-up, I'll tender out your project for you. Pretty much a jack of all trades. Some would say a master of none, but I disagree with them.
I disagree with that too.
And at times I try and be a real estate developer as well, and I'm always interested in doing innovative things, and I guess that's what ties to real estate invention.
Right. And he's my co-host as well, and I want to thank Matthew for joining me today and all of us. I'm going to tell a story about Matthew because he probably wouldn't tell about his mother and grandmother. When he came to me at 17, he said, I want to be in real estate. I would like to get my real estate license, Dad. What do you think? I said, great idea. But both his mother and grandmother said, oh, that's a terrible idea. He was going to leave a minimum wage job. Where were you working then, Matt?
At that point, I was working at Kunstad Sports on snowboards.
Right. So he had a minimum wage job that paid him $8 or $9 an hour, and at that time, and he could
work. It was worse than that. It was $6.75.
All right. Well, I didn't know that. So $6.75, and then he's going to leave that where if you work 1,000 hours, you make I guess $6,000 or $7,000 and less tax, or you could work 500 hours and make $25,000. And so when he finished at the Telfer School of Management, how much student debt you have, Matthew?
None.
None. All right. But both his mother and grandmother says, how can you leave a great job like that at Kunstad Sport for the uncertain world of being an entrepreneur? And so the reason I tell this story is that I'm not really sure that being an entrepreneur is that much more risky than having a job or a minimum wage job, because really the only security that all of us have is what we carry between our ears, our experience, our knowledge, our learning, our credentials. These are the things that really give us security, in my opinion. And I don't see why, working 500 hours for $25,000 as a student is worse than working 1,000 hours for, so twice as many hours for $6,000 or $7,000. But mother and grandmother did not agree. And there's another story I like to tell, which was Matt got his real estate license at 18. You need a GST today in Ontario, an HST number. And unfortunately, we didn't know, neither Matthew nor I knew, that in Canada you could not legally get a GST number or an HST number until you are 19. So for a year, Matthew had to practice with a GST number that really wasn't his. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And so we went to see our cabinet minister. We happened to have a cabinet minister who's our MP for the area. And we asked him, both Matthew and I asked him to look at this. And do you remember what he said?
It wasn't his problem.
It wasn't his problem. So we weren't too impressed with that. All right, so let's go back to me.
Did you vote for him again?
I never voted for him, Matthew, and I'm sure you didn't either. All right, so let's go back to me. So I am a real estate broker, like Matthew was referring earlier, at Century 21 Explorer Realty here in Ottawa. I have a bachelor's of engineering, civil engineering from McGill University in Montreal, a master's of engineering science in traffic and transportation at the University of New South Wales, and a PhD from the Australian National University in Canberra in urban economics. I'm probably best known as the founder of the Ottawa Senators, but today, my main focus is on being the best real estate and business coach I can be and a good Century 21 real estate broker. So here's my 140 character CV. Bruce is an entrepreneur, real estate broker, developer, coach, urban guru, keynote speaker, SENS founder, novelist, blogger, peerless husband and dad. I don't know if you'll buy the last bit, Matt, about the dad part, but there you go.
I can't. I have
No comment
no
on that?
comment on
All
that.
right. And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Prof Bruce. And if you want to tweet to at Prof Bruce, you'll get an answer. So if you need any help anytime, just let me know through Twitter. All right. So this course is going to, we're going to have 6 main parts to it. The introduction, which is today. And then part 2 will be the bad stuff. Part 3 will be the good stuff in real estate invention. Part 4 will be innovative business models that are making a difference in real estate. Part 5 is something that I'm interested in, which is, and I know Matthew, you're interested in this, green for real. So much of the stuff that we hear today about green, being green and sustainable, is what I would call greenwashing. It's not really either economically viable or doesn't really actually lead to higher levels of sustainability. So I'm going to talk about some things that you can do that I think have a good ROI, return on investment, and also make a significant difference to the environment. And then part 6 is just me talking about what I see coming down the pipe in terms of the future. Now you might ask, why are we going to do the bad stuff, which is part 2? Did you ask me that, Matt?
I didn't, but I was wondering.
Okay, and that's because the picture that you see on the screen here is a picture of a National Hockey League general manager, Glenn Sather, who, when we were putting the deal together to bring back the Ottawa Senators in, oh gosh, that's 25 plus years ago, we talked to Glenn Sather, and he said to me, you know, Bruce, the best deals you'll ever do are the ones you don't do. And in the year when the Oilers, the Edmonton Oilers, where he was GMing at the time, uh, in the year where they won the President's Trophy as the best team in the National Hockey League, I think they got beat out by the Calgary Flames. And that summer, Glenn told me that he was under tremendous pressure to get rid of Gretzky. Gretzky's a bum. Messier can't play. Fuhr's no good. Get rid of Anderson and Curry. And, he said, that was the year I made the fewest trades ever. And then the next year they won the Stanley Cup. They went, I think, 16 into winning the Stanley Cup. So the reason I'm going to go over the bad stuff in part 2 is to try and help people not waste 3 or 4 years of their lives on things that probably aren't going to work.
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
I think grandfather was the one who said, "See 100 deals, take one."
I think that's right. And Matt's talking about O.J. Firestone, Jack Firestone, my dad, and his grandfather. So when did the real estate business get started? Well, it probably started when human beings first made their homes in caves, and we think that happened about 750,000 years ago. And recognizably, modern human beings have been on the planet for probably 75 or 80 or 85,000 years, and they started really colonizing caves about 35,000 years ago. They built tents near the front, of the caves, because the caves were quite dark and damp and cold, but they did use the caves for lots of different things. They used them for ceremonies and cave painting, defense, obviously, gatherings, meetings, tool fabrication, textile production, clothing and weapon manufacturing, child rearing, cooking, weddings, funerals, births, hospitals. You can read the rest. And, if you think about it, today we're kind of heading back to the past, because today homes are being used for so much more than just, you live there, you sleep there, you go to work downtown. Now, if you think about it, multi-use is a thing whose time has come again. All right, so how did villages and towns begin? And so we're going to go back to the original village formation. And I picked this up some time ago, the story of Ugg and Nin. I just made those names up. They meet at a river for some reason. They don't kill each other. In other words, they meet there and they decide, oh, well, we're not going to fight to the death. Instead, they, for some reason, decide to co-locate, to bring their families together, initially for mutual protection. And then when they do bring their village together, their primitive village together, they notice something over the next few months, that Ugg is a very good hunter and Nin is a better flint knife carver. Flint knives were pretty important in primitive times because you use those for butchering animals, for sewing, for all kinds of things, tool making, etc. Also, of course, making fire, very important. So somehow or other, between Ugg and Nin, they decide, Ugg, why don't you just focus on hunting antelopes, because you're so much better at it than I am, and Nin, why don't you spend all your time making flint knives, because you make not only more flint knives than I do, but better ones. So this is what the primitive economy looks like. So here you have, before the village was formed, Ugg was hunting 4 antelopes and producing 1 set of flint knives, and Nin was producing 3 sets of flint knives and 1 antelope. But after the village formation, look at the difference in the primitive economy. It's incredible the change that's going on. So if you think about it, the information economy that we all talk about today is really not new. It's about information flowing from Ugg to Nin and in the reverse direction, circa 33,000 years ago. And so all of a sudden, the well-being of these 2 families just jumped enormously. All right. So it's a huge improvement. And then they have such an improvement in well-being that they have enough, going back here, enough antelopes and enough flint knives that they can trade with somebody else who maybe is expert in making textiles, i.e. animal skins. So now you start to get a little regional trading economy going, and it's made possible because of proximity, right? Skill sharing, knowledge transfer, and specialization. So this is something that's called comparative advantage. David Ricardo, a famous economist, said the tall dude should specialize in apple picking and the short dude should be the strawberry picker, right? That's really where a lot of economic progress for human beings has come from. So today we don't call it quite the same. We don't refer to it quite the same way as we used to. We often talk about something, excuse me, called collisionable hours. And what that just means is that in a village or city or town, you get these collisions between Ugg and Nin, and today between thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of people who see each other. And this is something I pulled out of Tony Hsieh's effort to transform Las Vegas from a gambling mecca, which of course it is, into something that's more than just that. This is where Tony's company, which is Zappos, is headquartered. Zappos is an online shoe store that he built to an enormous size and sold to Amazon for $1.2 billion. He then took that money, Matthew, and he put it into Las Vegas. And he calls it the Downtown Project. And they measure ROI, return on investment, kind of not the way you and I might do, as in terms of, am I making money on my investments, but am I improving collisionable hours? And he wanted 1,000 extra collisionable hours per year for every resident in the Las Vegas Downtown Project. He said that will increase creativity, specialization, knowledge transfer, and the ROI that most of us would be looking for will come from that. So that was his theory. And this is kind of like a little bit of an image that you can see here of what he's doing with downtown Las Vegas, and he's doing his best. He's invested, I think, about $200 or $250 million of his own money in this project. This is a book that I read probably in the 1970s called The Economy of Cities by Jane Jacobs, and she was one of the great urbanist thinkers of her generation. And she said that all ideas in economic development come from villages, towns, and cities. All. She didn't prevaricate, Matthew. She said all. And if you have time, it's still, to this day, even though it was written in the 60s, worth reading. Okay, so what happens in a city or a town or a village is that anybody who owns property there will benefit or is likely to benefit from positive externalities. So one of the things that we look for today is what is the walkability score. And this is a service that's available online. You can see the URL there, www.walkscore.com. And you can put in, I think, any address in North America and get some idea as to whether your property, whether it's a residential property or commercial property, is in fact a walkable kind of place, in a walkable community. And what we have found is that whether you're doing a commercial project or you're doing a residential project or you're buying a residential building, an apartment building or duplex or whatever you're buying or investing in, that when you have high walkability scores today, whether it's Canada or the United States, the sell-through will be faster, the rentability will be higher, and you will get more money and your ROI is likely to be higher. And I mentioned in this slide here, we have a project going on in Ottawa called Zibi, and it's run by Jonathan Westiny. I think you've met Jonathan, right?
I have.
And Jonathan told me that today, before they do any, this is a multi-billion-dollar project, by the way, before they do any projects today, They want to make sure it's highly, highly walkable, or they won't do it. So what is an externality? It's an economic term that says any cost or benefit that affects a party who did not choose to incur or cause that cost or benefit. That's kind of a funny way of saying, look, if something good happens next door, maybe it spills over onto your property and you get some benefit. Just the way that if somebody put a crack house next door to you, what do you think would happen to your property values, Matthew?
Might go up if you're a crackhead.
Well, okay. But realistically, for most people,
it's going to drop.
It's going to drop. So there are negative externalities too, but we're going to focus for the moment on positives. So what are some of those positives that you might see? Well, if a new bridge is built that reduces your travel time to get downtown, for example, that's a positive externality. You didn't do anything. You didn't make any contribution to that bridge other than maybe pay your taxes, right? But all of a sudden, your property is worth more. Same thing if a new subway station opens up close by, more transit. Maybe the zoning code is amended to allow higher density, maybe greater intensity, which means more mixing together of different uses. Possibly a new interchange gets built, or new sewers or water mains or other infrastructure, new cell towers, higher internet speeds. The last one probably needs a little bit of explanation, but it has been shown for some time now that if you buy a property or you invest in a property that is on a grid pattern, it's probably worth more than something that's on a curvilinear pattern. Do you remember this guy, Matthew, here in the lower right-hand corner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Richard Rakowski. He's a former counselor in this area, and he used to live in a suburb where all the streets were these kind of, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see them, curvilinear streets. And I think there were either 9 or 10 left turns he had to make to get to his home at night. And of course, 9 or 10 right-hand turns he had to make to every time he left. It drove Richard crazy. And so this is kind of the modern, when I say modern, I mean the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s pattern of streets and street development. And the gridded pattern is more of a traditional kind of thing. But you could see clearly that in these curvilinear things, every trip is much longer. And instead of all streets sharing a little bit of the pain of traffic, 1 or 2 streets in the curvilinear model suffers all of the traffic. This is a much worse model. So when you're looking for property, look for grid patterns and you probably are going to do better. Make sense?
Yeah. It's a top-down approach to city building as opposed to a utility-based approach to city building. So when you look from the sky, the curvilinear streets look all pretty, and
exactly.
And when you put it on a map and you show it to buyers go, "Oh, look at that subdivision!
It's so pretty.
Isn't it so pretty?" Whereas when you look at the grid from the top down, it's a grid.
Yeah, exactly.
But the utility is just
the utility is incomparably better, and it's much more interesting to walk as well.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some other positive externalities? Well, there's more shopping in your area, more restaurants. If buildings like this one here, at least half of this building is being gentrified. If somebody next door to you, Matthew, gentrifies, as they have in the lower right-hand side here, gentrifies his or her property, what happens to the property on the left here?
Goes up in value.
Goes up in value, even though he or she didn't do anything. And of course, having good schools nearby, being close to elder care, grocery stores, hospital health care, anything that's a major employment generator is important. Fitness, recreation, parks, arts, entertainment and culture, being not too far from the airport or rail connections. Close to tertiary universities and colleges, very important today. And I also, this is kind of neo-urbanist planning, but the other thing I look for is I look for towns and cities and townships and counties where they are allowing more, I guess, more freedom to engage in creative urban design. So it means you can add parking to your rear yard or your side yard or even your front yard. You can add an in-home flat in your house. You can have a separate entrance for that flat. You can do more landscaping and hardscaping. People don't really want grass anymore. They would like to do more with hardscaping, reduce obviously consumption of water and, other kinds of things like insecticides, fertilizers, as well as time. And, if you mow, everybody thinks grass is green. Well, happens to be the color green, but you have to water it, you have to feed it, you have to weed it. You get your lawnmower out. If it's gas powered, you're producing more CO2. So today, certainly you want to look at jurisdictions that allow you to do more with hardscaping. You'd also like to be things like add maybe a granny flat or a coach house in the backyard, maker space, a workshop. I can't tell you, Matthew, the number of clients I'm working with today who want workshops in their backyard.
Absolutely. It's a huge value added.
Huge value added. Yeah, I mean, the fancy term for it in 2000 and whatever is makerspace. But, when I was your age, Matt, we used to call it just a workshop. But today it's makerspace. So all of these factors, will help you guys recognize areas where the properties that you are buying or investing in are more rentable, where the inflation, not only in housing but in commercial property, will be higher. Obviously, walk scores, transit scores, bike scores, location scores will be better. So, Matthew, we're going to take a break and come back in about 5 minutes. So everybody, hang on.